1,000 euros or dollars. $1,000 for a machine with less power than a base PlayStation 5 and no controller included. Yeah. So I just came back from a short YouTube break to focus on my university exams, and now that I've finished everything, I told myself, well, it's time to chill with some games. And when I opened Steam, I was greeted by this banner to reserve a spot on the Steam Machine waitlist. Yes, finally, we have the Steam Machine here. But lo and behold, the insane prices. Before we dive deeper into this, let me give you a rundown of what a Steam Machine is if you are unaware. What is the Steam Machine? For those unfamiliar, the Steam Machine is Valve's attempt to close the gap between the PC world and the console world, which would be amazing. It's like the Star Wars prophecy. It is supposed to bring balance to the Force between the light and the dark side.
He is the chosen one. He will bring balance.
And all of that using Linux as its main operating system. Well, a custom version of Linux called SteamOS. Think about what makes a console so appealing for many. You take it out of the box, you plug it in, and you start playing almost immediately. Although nowadays you have to go through updates to actually start playing. But yeah, it's almost immediately. There are no drivers to install, no settings to tinker with, and certainly no compatibility headaches. The PC world, on the other hand, is extraordinarily powerful and flexible, but it has never quite managed that simplicity. You have higher chances of needing to tinker with stuff than on a console. The Steam Machine is Valve's answer to that problem. It is essentially a PC, but one that has been consoleized. It runs SteamOS, Valve's Linux-based operating system, and is designed to boot straight into Steam's big picture mode. Just like the setup we explored with Bazoit in a previous video you can watch in the pop-up. You get all the advantages of PC gaming, which is no subscription fees for online play, you get access to mods, historically better game prices, and a back catalogue that stretches back decades, wrapped in an experience that should feel as approachable as turning on a PlayStation or a Switch. The Steam Deck changed everything. To understand why I care so much about this launch, and why I think so many people in the Linux community do too, you have to go back to the Steam Deck. Before the Steam Deck arrived, Linux gaming was a passion project, an admirable passion project sustained by a dedicated community, but a rather niche one. Proton, which is Valve's compatibility layer that allows Linux to run Windows games, existed, but game support was patchy and quite unpredictable. Hardware manufacturers, Nvidia in particular, had little incentive to prioritize Linux driver quality, and anti-cheat systems simply did not work on Linux. That is still kind of the case nowadays, although we do have better compatibility than in the past. The experience for the average user was one of workarounds and compromises and learning a lot of tinkering. Then the Steam Deck shipped, and the gaming landscape on Linux changed completely. Suddenly, Valve had millions of devices in the wild running SteamOS. It was a commercial product. There was a real commercially significant installed base of Linux gaming hardware that developers and hardware vendors could no longer ignore, and Proton and Linux gaming matured at a pace nobody had anticipated. The Steam Deck Verified program gave developers a concrete target to hit, and the ProtonDB community exploded. Games that had never officially supported Linux simply started working because Valve had both the motivation and the engineering resources to make them work. It is what got me and hundreds of others into Linux to begin with. So that is the precedent the Steam Machine was supposed to build on. A second major Valve hardware platform, another wave of investment in SteamOS, another incentive for developers and manufacturers to take Linux seriously. That is what I and many others were hoping for. And that hope is precisely why the reveal of the pricing stings hard. The price. Here are the different price points for different configurations and bundles of the Steam Machine. The 512GB Steam machine, which is not even a full terabyte of storage mind you, costs just above €1,000. Sounds like I'm in Cyberpunk, honestly. And that's without the controller. If you want the controller included, that is €1,108. If you want 2 terabytes of storage, then you are looking at €1,359 without the controller, or €1,428 with it. For context, a base PlayStation 5 costs roughly half of that entry price. And the Steam machine, by Valve's own hardware specs, delivers less raw performance than that base PS5. We are talking about paying nearly double for a machine that is, on paper, less powerful than what Sony sells you for €500. I believe that with those prices, you won't be convincing the traditional console crowd. Why can't Valve just sell it cheaper? Now, this is a delicate matter because this isn't Valve being greedy or wanting this. They said so themselves in the Steam Machine news article. Component costs have skyrocketed over the past years due to many geopolitical reasons. The rise of AI, tariffs, fuel costs rising because of wars. In many cases, they couldn't even obtain the necessary parts. So you might be thinking, why doesn't Valve do what Sony, Microsoft and Nintendo do? All three of those companies sell their consoles at a loss. The hardware costs more to manufacture than they charge you for it, and they make that money back through game sales and subscriptions like PS Plus, Game Pass and the Nintendo Switch Online. It is a proven model and it has worked historically. Everyone who buys a PlayStation then goes and buys PlayStation games, and every purchase feeds directly back to Sony because it is a closed system. But Valve cannot really do that. The Steam machine is not a closed ecosystem. It is a PC first and foremost, a pre-configured, consoleized machine, but a PC nonetheless. If Valve were to sell it at a significant loss, they would not just be attracting gamers. Imagine any design studio, any 3D artist, any small business that needs a capable workstation. If Valve is selling powerful PCs at below market prices, those people will buy them too, and they will never purchase a single game through Steam. Basically, they would be using the Steam machines for work. Valve would be bleeding money with no way to recover it. Sony, Nintendo and Microsoft can afford to take a hit on each console because they know the person buying it is going to spend years buying games, subscriptions and DLC. Valve simply does not have that edge. And to be honest, thank God to that, because the PC platform must always remain as open as possible in my opinion. But of course it does have that drawback. The silver lining. Now, I do not want to make this an entirely negative video because there is something generally positive happening alongside this launch that deserves attention. The Steam machine runs SteamOS, and for it to work properly across a wider range of configurations, Valve has been pushing hard to broaden hardware compatibility yet again. They predict that they won't be able to sell as many units of the Steam machine as they hope for, so they are expanding the hardware compatibility for other machine configurations, so you, yourself, can build your own Steam machine. And that includes significantly improving NVIDIA support. For a long time, NVIDIA and Linux have had a complicated relationship. AMD has been the GPU of choice for Linux enthusiasts, largely because of its open source driver stack, while NVIDIA's proprietary drivers have historically caused headaches on anything outside of Windows. And they kinda still do nowadays. It's much better than in the past, but it's still problematic. Valve, because they now have a real commercial stake in SteamOS running well on real hardware, has been actively working to improve that situation. You are not locked into buying Valve's hardware at Valve's prices. You can source your own components, potentially including an NVIDIA GPU. You could install SteamOS and arrive at a very similar experience for considerably less money if you are patient and resourceful about where you buy your parts. And that ripple effect should extend beyond just SteamOS users, because every improvement Valve makes to driver and hardware compatibility, every improvement to Proton benefits the entire Linux ecosystem. It benefits Bazzite users, Arch users, Fedora users, anyone running games through Proton on any distribution. So while I think the Steam Machine as a retail product has launched at the wrong price and at the wrong moment, there is still some hope for motivating Valve to improve the platform via the SteamOS development, the hardware support expansion, and of course the NVIDIA progress. What should you do instead? If you're interested in building a PC right now or getting into PC gaming for the first time, it's a tumultuous time to be sure. My honest recommendation is not the Steam Machine, and it is also not a brand new pre-built system with entirely new components. Everything is just too expensive. What I would actually do is go component by component, and for the expensive parts, particularly RAM, SSDs, and storage in general, I would look at the second-hand market. Places like Facebook Marketplace or Wallapop, if you're in Spain, can get you significant savings. Second-hand graphic cards are also worth considering, with the usual caveat that you cannot always know how a previous owner treated their hardware. But with the current new prices, it is the most pragmatic route if budget matters to you. And if budget does not matter to you, or you think the benefits highly outweigh the high prices, then PC gaming is where gaming is best. And I think that overall you won't be disappointed at spending between 1,000 to 1,500 euros in a machine that can make you very happy. My desktop PC cost around 1,200 euros when I rebuilt it entirely in 2021 for fully transitioning into Linux, and it's still working rock solid. It's right here behind me. It goes high to ultra settings, and it's one of the best purchases I made in life. So the Steam Machine is a fascinating product that I generally want to succeed, but is launching at a moment in time that is making it very complicated. I think the hardcore Valve fans will certainly buy it, but I think most people will look at the price and then look at a console's price and walk away. And I think that is a genuine shame, because the idea at the heart of the Steam Machine is incredible.
You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them! Bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness!
Right, tell me what you think in the comments. Maybe I am reading this wrong. Maybe you are the person who is absolutely buying one, and I would generally love to understand why. And as always, remember, with great cost comes great expectations.